So we're back again for season 2 of the catch up. This one's going to be a bit more product related. So we're back today with Tim Mawson from Salesfire, head of partnerships, and head of partnerships also from Klarna, Dan Spencer.
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone.
Oh, feels like a while since I've seen anyone external to Salesfire, especially even via Zoom calls. It's just strange still.
It's nice to be, it's nice to be in the same place as other human beings, to be fair. So lots been happening with coming out of lockdown and the whole COVID thing going on. But like in terms of the reaction that you've seen, Dan, with Klarna, like how have you found it throughout?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, obviously it's been a sort of roller coaster 3-4 months for everybody, especially in retail. So I think there's kind of two ways to look at it from our perspective. One is from a retailer perspective, so a kind of Klarna new business perspective, and also from a consumer perspective as well. So for us, we saw the initial kind of shock impact on retail with everybody kind of stopping any development work or sort of closing the doors to any kind of new features on their site. So as a result, we kind of slowed down initially in terms of new launches and new go lives from a Klarna perspective. But then very quickly after that, I think retailers started to see us as a bit of a support mechanism for both them and their consumers. In terms of the kind of product offering that we have with the deferred payments, and then also as well as that, they also kind of saw us as a bit of a quick win. So all of the kind of key KPIs that we kind of helped with allowed them to kind of balance the negative impact of the kind of lack of consumer spending on the sites was kind of balanced out by the increases in performance that Klarna brought.
There definitely seemed to be everyone reining things in at first. There was kind of a panic, and it was a case of stop everything and kind of go into some kind of stasis really for a while.
There was, and I think it was more the unknown of kind of what was happening first of all. What was going on?
It was pretty unknown.
Yeah, and then also kind of what's going to happen over the next kind of few months. So there was a real kind of sort of, as I say, a worry about what was happening, and even for pure plays, obviously people that had stores and things were concerned, and obviously they had to shut, so that was a negative impact. But there was a period where obviously even pure plays were having to shut down because their kind of delivery and logistics systems that deliver all of their goods were also not able to run either. So and the warehouses, etc., etc. So yeah, there was that period. But then once I think people started adapting, and the kind of logistics network out there was running fine.
Yeah, that came into its own, really, didn't it? I think.
It did. Yeah. And I actually spoke to, I mean, I was one of probably everybody here that was getting a parcel delivered every other day. So I was
boredom buys.
Exactly, yeah. So I was best buds with the UPS driver by the end of it. But I had a chat with him, and he was saying that this was kind of peak COVID, peak lockdown. And he was saying that I think he personally delivered about I think it was 250 or 300 parcels or something that day, and he was saying that was over and above anything that he'd experienced in peak or Christmas or anything like that. So yeah, the kind of digital world and the infrastructure behind it kind of came into its own in kind of supporting retail as a whole.
I do think as well, from speaking to merchants at our end as well, they were looking, as you mentioned there, it became a thing where, as we all know, consumer confidence went through the floor. People didn't know where the paycheck was at, or if they were on furlough, they didn't know what funds they had available. So using an option like Klarna, where you could obviously spread that purchase across 3, or pay in 30 days when maybe you've got a little more idea of where things are, I think that helped obviously retail out a fair bit as well.
I think furlough helped settle people. So people on furlough, I think, realised that they didn't have the outgoings of travel to work, everything that goes with it, all the expenses that go with it. And they kind of ended up in a situation where they knew what kind of free cash they had to spend from home. So you started with, obviously orders started to move upwards And then I feel as though it's the question's going to be what comes next, because it's almost like they put the inevitable kind of crash of everything on hold by introducing the furloughs. Now people are kind of picking and choosing who they're bringing back into the workplace, I guess. I think there'll be I think it's going to look a little bit grim on the employment front. So it's almost like the backlash is still to happen off the back of it, really. But it's been odd the way that a lot of we were kind of making predictions on the podcast along the way of what we think would do well. And we actually said, didn't we, that naturally people get bored at home, they'll start making purchases. Yeah. And it's all kind of, I don't know how you found it, but it was kind of we found it was a lot of like active wear. People suddenly living in t-shirts and tracky bottoms. It was like those sales, and it was like your luxury sales, your luxury brands kind of fell away. Our prediction, whether it's starting to happen or not, is with people returning back to work, some more of the luxury items people kind of going, right, I need new work shoes, new work clothes, and things like that, and like starting to make purchases that represent kind of re-emerging from the house a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to kind of follow up from that, there was definitely winners and losers, I think, and we did notice some real clear trends in terms of the verticals that were performing well. So I actually listened to a webinar during lockdown, and a guy said he made a statement which was really, really obvious, but it kind of made everything a bit clearer. He was like, anything that somebody sells that you can do in the home is going to do well, and anything that you need to go out of the home to do is not going to do well.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious. I was like, it kind of makes sense. So like formal wear, for example, obviously suit, wedding attire or whatever, that's obviously nosedive.
Collapsed, yeah.
Whereas the home and garden sector, sports and exercise, sports equipment, that kind of stuff, athleisure, all of those things have done super well. And a couple of our clients saw amazing performance just around that lockdown period. One of which was Halfords, which was pulled out of all bikes for like a month. you had to set up alerts to get like the new stock alerts, and even then it was difficult to.
Wow.
Yeah. And the other one was Peloton, which kind of makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they really pushed marketing during the lockdown, didn't they?
That was going to be my next point as well. Like something like Klarna makes logistical sense because it's what is it, like $2,000 a bike or something?
Something
and
like
then and then
like a monthly fee as well. So you can package the whole thing up into a monthly charge, so you can get the subscription to their bike lessons or classes or whatever you call them.
Lessons. I'd need the lessons.
I call proficiency test on.
Yeah.
I'd make one of those fixed ones just fall over still.
It's like going out the front door. See you later.
The only person that needs is stabilizers on an indoor bike.
It's not saying much about you here, Rich. Really,
I know,
yeah.
It's like everyone knows me.
So they package us. As I say, they have the subscription, but they also have the bike, and you can pay for the bike outright and then pay for the subscriptions, or you can use Klarna to kind of spread the payments, which
Cool.
which obviously makes sense. And it's those kind of items work really well through it, because people, especially with exercise classes and that kind of thing, are used to having a subscription model. So with a gym or something like that, they're used to paying for everything monthly. So if you can get into so you can package up the offer rather than saying this is $2,000 up front, and you can say, right, it's £50 a month or whatever it might be. Then it's just it gives that consumer, as I say, as you mentioned, Tim, it gives that consumer confidence when they're purchasing, and gives them a higher perceived purchase power, which is obviously what we're trying to do.
I think I just want to touch on something quickly. Obviously, you've mentioned Halfords, Peloton. I think there's this perception out there that Klarna tends to deal with like fast fashion or fashion in general. I think recently there's been like a big shift, and you're noticing more like, I think I was looking on LinkedIn the other day, and obviously there's things like Cox and Cox, which is like a traditional homeware retailer. There's other bits and bobs which are more like car parts, that sort of stuff as well. Are you seeing a shift in merchants using Klarna in terms of their like vertical?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think our initial kind of strategy when entering into the UK market, we very much focused on our pay later product.
Yeah.
And that at the time was actually the only product that we had in that space. So we launched in the market with pay later, and pay later really suits fashion. So changing your sitting room into a fitting room by using the deferred 30-day deferred payment, as I say, suits fashion perfectly. So we went hard on fashion. It obviously enabled us to get our brand out there as well. So it's kind of a mass market. When you've got the likes of ASOS and Topshop, those kind of guys, it enables us to get a foothold in the market. But at the start of this year, we had a kind of, not a shift, but we obviously launched our new product, which was paying 3 installments. And I think that opened up new verticals for us. So it still works very well for fashion. So trainers, funnily enough, are one of is our biggest seller on paying 3. So it still works very well for fashion, but as I say, it has opened us up into new verticals, and it's also pushed the price point that we can offer it to at, which again increases the scope of the reach of that product. So the new markets that we're looking at, or the new verticals, that a couple that you mentioned there. So electronics is a really good one for us. And we worked very closely with Samsung recently on their launch of their new handset. Those kind of more considered purchases in the electronic space work very well for paying 3. And around that kind of, I always see it as it fitting nicely for between £300 and £1,200. It works very nicely because those kind of figures, it's quite a big hit to take in 1 month, but then if you spread it out over 3, it becomes a bit more palatable. So electronics is one of them. Sports equipment, another one. So we touched on Halfords. Golf is also a big one for us. So some of those drivers and sets of golf clubs, looking at sort of 500 up to kind of £1,000. So again, sweet spots, very nice, and especially if you are breaking golf clubs like I did last weekend.
Nice.
It's quite a good option for those purchases that you weren't intending to do. So sports equipment, electronics, homewares, you mentioned, cosmetics, has been a huge one for us. And beauty has been another one, sort of going back to COVID, that has really done very well in COVID. So people, rather than kind of going out and spending, they've kind of treated themselves to maybe some more sort of luxury sort of bar salts or whatever.
It's almost like people have used that opportunity to, where they're stuck in the house, to kind of work out almost like a change kind of thing, like try different products and things for when they re-emerge. So it could be like a new me, that type of thing,
So it's beauty was one that did really well for us, and that works for both of our products, Pay Later and paying 3. And then luxury as well. So luxury was a relatively new one for us until recently, but I think we're kind of being seen as, a lot of people were a little bit concerned in the luxury market of kind of using Klarna, because it was seen as they didn't think it was suitable for their customers. But the kind of shift in that kind of narrative internally has allowed us to kind of pitch Klarna, not as, it might not necessarily suit all of their existing customers, but what it will do is it will bring a new set of customers to their brand. And that's probably one of our main selling points now, is that customer acquisition piece. So I think we're, at last count, was about 8.2 million active users in the UK, which is huge. Which is massive, and I think we're nearing on 100 million globally now. So being able to bring that consumer franchise to a brand is really powerful, and it kind of sits alongside all of our kind of joint marketing activity that we do with retailers, just looking to kind of increase our reach, but also increase the reach of our brands. So for us, we're always trying to increase our share of checkout, because that's kind of the sort of market stick as to how well you're performing on that brand. So if we can work with a brand similar to what we do with you guys, in promoting Klarna's payment methods on the site, using it as a conversion tool and increasing that share of checkout, then everybody's a winner.
Yeah, makes sense. Who do you find you win market share off of, the particular companies that kind of you're successful over?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in speaking about the UK specifically, I think the other sort of players in the sort of checkout space is obviously whatever the payment service provider is. So whoever's taking the card payments, so the likes of Adyen, WorldPay, etc. we'll sort of work alongside them as a partner in order to kind of display our payment methods within their gateway. But then obviously it will kind of take away from some of the card processing that they might be doing if we're performing well. We've obviously got PayPal, who's kind of the biggest alternative payment method out there. So we're competing against them. It is obviously a different offering that we're offering. So it's not a direct competitor that you could say. But if you're looking at share of checkout again, that's one that we'd be taken away from. And then you've got the likes of Amazon Pay and Apple Pay, and those guys. So again, slightly different offerings. So it's difficult to say if they're a direct competitor. But we would, but if someone used them rather than us, then it's taking share of checkout away from us. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, who we see within the market. There's a couple of new pay later or pay in installment providers who have entered the UK recently. So one called ClearPay and one called Laybuy. ClearPay from Australia and Laybuy from New Zealand. Both of them offer pay in installments, but they do different terms. So ClearPay is fortnightly and Laybuy is weekly. Neither of which necessarily meet the UK or match, the UK salary cycle. So for us, we haven't seen. They are doing okay, but we haven't seen a huge sort of dent in what we're doing. They own the markets that they originate from. So Australia, they dominate over there. But yeah, I think it's quite difficult to enter a new market when we've had the last few years that we've had and managed to get our brand out there as much as we can. And again, that comes back to that pushing the brand and getting that consumer franchise that we've got here. That puts us in a very strong position.
100% agree. I think it's a good point you've touched on there as well when you talk about alternate like pay later options. As you say, I'm not familiar with many people who get paid weekly, to be fair. I don't know if that's a thing.
It's not a thing over here, really.
No,
well,
so as you say, if you're going to split payments over weekly, then that makes no difference to me working how I do. I imagine it makes no difference to quite a few people who listen to this. Quite a few people who listen to this now, big time. But yeah, the idea is, as you say, it makes logical sense to split things monthly and do it that way, because that is, as you say. So I think that's probably the strongest way to do things, as you say.
Yeah.
For me, it was always a case of when I dealt with payments in previous partnership roles, it was always a case of it was a race to the bottom, really. So it was a case of we're dealing with Visa, MasterCard payments, and it was what rate can we get, and literally it was retailers just shopping around comparing rates. We used to even encourage retailers to go get a quote from elsewhere and go to your current provider and see if they can knock them down. And no one really had anything different. It was just a case of there's your checkout embedded into the billing page, and that's it. So I think you guys were the first ones that came along with something that offered something different, like different options to pay, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I think
freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing as well, and what we've noticed, as we've just launched in Australia actually, at the just pre-Corona, which wasn't obviously perfect timing, and it's hindered the team that have gone over there a little bit, but everything seems to be moving again, apart from Melbourne, I think. So yeah, but activity wise over there, we're ramping things up. But what we've noticed over there is because that's kind of not the home of deferred payments, but they're a much more mature market when it comes to deferred payments. There's a lot more players in that market. There's probably about 20 different companies that are offering some kind of deferred payment.
Yeah.
What we've noticed over there is that brands will have multiple pay later options on site, and that started in the UK now as well. So if you look at JD Sports, for example, who've been one of our biggest clients for quite a long time, they've now chucked on ClearPay onto their site. So it's kind of giving that consumer the option. And as long as your consumer offering is as good as possible, we've got a big focus on our app now as well, giving the consumers more functionality from a usability perspective, and giving them products that suit their payments, etc., etc. We're kind of accepting the fact there's going to be competition, but we're trying to give the consumer the best experience in order for that decision making process when they get to the checkout to guide them towards us.
100%. I think that's how everybody wins off the back of it, as you say. If you keep the customer in mind, I know it sounds daft again. It sounds like what you were saying before about that man literally stating the obvious about lockdown. But if you give the consumers the best options for themselves and they have the chance to literally look and go, right, I can do this one in months or I can do this one in weeks, whichever one fits their cycle works best, really, as you say. But again, it comes back to that point. I don't know many people who get paid weekly. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, as I say, we've seen, especially in terms of, I mentioned obviously certain verticals doing well. But what we've actually seen is, because historically we have performed very well in terms of the consumers that's been using us, we have performed very well in that kind of millennial space.
Mm-hmm.
What we've seen over the last sort of 6 to 12 months is that's kind of changing as well. So we are moving into a slightly, well, obviously got the Gen Z customers as well, and we're moving into a slightly older market as well. And I think that's kind of down to that, again, the brand growing, so more people kind of knowing about us, but then also us being offered on slightly different sites, so different verticals in terms of the site. So that's kind of opened it up into a new consumers as well.
I'll be honest with you, I had a bit of a proud moment over lockdown. So I went to see my dad.
You managed to use an e-commerce site?
Way. No, I went to see my dad over lockdown, and he was like, "You won't believe this. I've just bought 2 watches using this thing where I can pay over 3 months." And I was like, "You are? He said, "You've done what? Sorry." And he was like, "Yeah, this Klarna thing." I was like,
"Yeah, and I'm just not going to pay. I'm not going to pay. I've got 2 watches delivered."
Did not get delivered. Goodbye. But no, I was like, "This is mad." As you say, the marketing, and from what I've seen from you guys before in presentations, being geared around the younger generation. But he looked at that and saw it as more viable over lockdown and went with it. So
absolutely, and I think going back again to launching the pay in 3 installments product, that really has been a bit of a game changer for us, and it's allowed us it's allowed us to market much more upstream. So again, how we work with you guys, and also how some of the messaging is placed on product pages and on emails, pop-ups, or whatever it might be.
Yep.
It's all trying to look at kind of, as I say, increasing that purchase power for the consumer. So when they look at a product, rather than it being £150, they can see that from their disposable income, they can spread that out over 3 months instead of one. But another thing that we've kind of that we've launched over lockdown, which was planned anyway, but lockdown's kind of prioritised it a little bit more for us, is our most recent marketing campaign, which I don't know if you guys have seen yet, but it's called Klarna Sense.
I caught a bit of it. Yeah, actually, I'll be honest with you, I do as well. I say I caught a bit of it. I've probably read 7 million articles because fanboy of the year. But yeah, feel free to explain, Dan.
Yeah, no, it's basically it's all about responsible spending. So it's ensuring that consumers are thinking properly before they make a purchase. So there was a kind of little bit of bad press about us just around kind of people maybe not being able to afford what they're purchasing if they are using Klarna. So we're trying to kind of change the narrative on our side, and to kind of explain that rather than it's kind of looking to get people to spend more money, it's more looking to allow people to be more flexible with their spending. So rather than them taking a big hit 1 month, obviously it's spreading that out over 3 months. So we're very open about all of our terms and everything. There is no impact on credit score at all on pay later or pay in 3. So yeah, it's looking to change that narrative, and again, trying to change also the kind of target demographics that we're going for as well.
Yeah,
Cool, makes sense.
How many clients are you up to now, Dan?
Good question.
Ballpark to the nearest 10,000.
Yeah, let me just check the latest stats. So we actually had a really good stat go around the other day, because we've got this kind of auto onboarding feature for smaller merchants that we've launched this year.
Does that mean they don't have to go through KYC? Is it that type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they essentially just don't need to deal with a salesperson, so they can go onto the website, put in their details, set up an account. It'll go through our merchant underwriting process.
Yeah.
Once they're approved, they just need to integrate into the site. So
that's pretty cool.
So it's, yeah, as I say, it's targeted predominantly at the SME space, but it's open for anyone. Some brands would prefer to speak to somebody, so we do still have our sales team, and our merchant success team.
That kind of ties into kind of the reason I was asking that question. Really, we've traditionally always just done kind of outbound marketing, so it's largely a telesales team, and obviously a partnerships team going through agencies. And what we do is we target a certain size of customer. So for us, we can only really prove value and a return on investment. We do it on page views because it's cleaner than asking people what the revenue is, which people want to keep close to the chest, really. So we tend to work off 20,000 page views a month as a minimum point where we know that people get a return on what we do, and then upwards from there. But what we've noticed in terms of doing the marketing, we can't focus in on that. So what we found is we've probably got the UK, for example, we've probably found that there's between 15 to 18,000 viable customers for us to approach or onboard. So what we've done is we've for the first time we've started doing paid social. So we're on Facebook, we're on, we're across LinkedIn and things. We've started to really push that. But what we found is we can't focus in specifically on that size of customer. So what we found off the back of it is, especially with a lot of the campaigns we're doing alongside yourself as well, the co-branded kind of Klarna campaign with the overlays, is that there's a lot of tiny little merchants there. So the ones where they're still not on their own domain, they're on something.shopify.com, for example. You can see they're just loading products, the domain's not there, or we're all been in this game long enough to look at a site and go, that's probably one sale a week going through that website. So what we found is I think Josh will correct me here, but if we were bringing in 50 inquiries, there was probably 6 that were viable for us. But what our problem is trying to satisfy the needs and our own brand reputation to give the other 46 that aren't viable for us, make sure that we give them something, give them some value so that they can actually use us, and almost like freemium models and things, easy onboarding without it breaking the bank for us, because dealing with 44 non-viable customers, yes, they might grow so you can nurture them, but that takes a lot of doing. So I don't know how you handle. I guess your response to that is you've just made the onboarding kind of self, so that they can literally do everything themselves.
Yeah, so we have our our auto onboarding function, and then there's a support team which is based out of our HQ, which kind of supports those merchants.
Yeah.
You also have an SME sales team, who essentially kind of handhold people through that process, because, like you say, not all of them will have a team. They have an e-commerce team or whatever, so might need a little bit of handholding through the process. So those guys kind of focus on that, kind of the 0 to 5 mil turnover. We do it on turnover rather than paid views, just because obviously payments that's the best. Way.
Well, incoming, you can ask that question. So if you've got incoming inquiries, you can say, what do you turn over? Outgoing, you can't say, oh, what do you turn? It's kind of page views. You're trying to find some arbitrary way of kind of asking that question, really, is what we find. It's bizarre.
Absolutely, because the turnover question is a bit, I wouldn't say personal, but it's a bit, it's a bit detailed into their business, especially when you're just starting to try and build a relationship with somebody. So yeah, I've got the stats now, actually.
Cool.
So we have got UK 5,500 active retailers. Globally, it's up to 218,000 now.
Goodness me. I remember your conference last year. I want to say October, November time. I think you were at 170. So you've only managed to onboard another 48,000 in that time.
Yeah, so here's this good stat that I wanted to mention. So we add a new, where has it gone?
I'm waiting for this to be like 0.2 seconds.
We add a new retailer every 7 minutes or something.
Goodness me.
Seem to have lost the stat, but yeah, so we've got 5,500 in the UK, 8.2 million users in the UK. We have 100,000 new users, so that's customers, every week. So 100,000 that haven't used Klarna before start to use Klarna every week, which is great. Here it is. So 7 mins. So every 7 minutes, Klarna signs up goes live with a new client.
Goodness me. How big's the onboarding team? How big's the sales team?
So it's all regional. So each region kind of has its own teams. But I think our sales team in the UK is probably about 25, 30 now. SME's about 10. But then, as I say, there's loads more in the other markets as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're live in 11,000 physical stores now. So that's something else that's relatively new this year, especially in the UK. So we launched with H&M and Halfords both in store at the start of the year. So obviously that the performance of in-store took a bit of a hit when every store shut.
A little bit.
Yeah, the forecasts were a little bit off on the in-store.
What's the plan? What's the plan next then? Once you got world domination,
Marv.
So I think that there's quite a lot of focus on our app at the moment. Like I say, so the app is a slightly it's called sort of shopping app is what it's called, and it's currently live it's live here, but there's a slightly different version of it available in the US and Australia. Basically, what that allows you to do, and it's going to be launching in the UK soon, is to go onto any site. So whether they've got Klarna installed or not, is go onto any site and complete a Klarna purchase on it via the app. So we create essentially a ghost card that then goes to the transaction for the merchant. It just looks as though somebody's purchased on a debit card or credit card, but that has created an account for them in Klarna, and they've now be able to complete that transaction in 90 days, 60 days, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the next piece, and that kind of gives us some more ammo. So when we're going into retailers, when we're looking to go live with retailers, we can say, look, you've got X amount of people currently paying on Klarna via our app on your site. So there's demand for it there.
I see.
Hopefully that will then increase the number of consumers that we've got using it as well. So we can say, look, we've got 10 million or we've got 15 million active users in the UK. This is kind of a huge subset of the population that you're not servicing because you haven't got us on your site. So that's coming next, which will be really really cool. And like I say, in store is kind of quite a big focus for us as well. So yeah, that's the net.
So really, you're pushing traffic into customers as well, into your retailers. It's not just a case of you're a payment gateway. You've kind of moved beyond the boundaries of that in a sense.
I think it had always been something like that as well, because the shop directory serves that purpose, doesn't it? So that you can obviously list, and customers like myself could go on there and find someone in homeware and go, right, okay, there's that. I can shop Klarna on these, and then move forward that way. There's loads of different bits and bobs, and I think you're very social with your clients as well. So you'll do like bits and bobs like guess the merchant or something like that, which draws people in. It's a different way of looking at the standard, so pardon my French here, but the boring payments industry. Like you look at it and you just imagine stuffy blokes in suits going, money, 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 yes, yes, yes. Whereas Klarna is
Is that your image of it?
That's literally, in my head, all I see is blokes sat there just going, throwing burning 50s and just sat there smoking Cubans going, money, 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 yes, yes, yes. Done. There you go.
Yeah, and I think I mean on that point.
Follow that.
On the, I guess the kind of branding and the perception of payments is that there is a real, if you actually have a look at a lot of other payment companies, there's a real similarity in their branding and their perception, and it's all of the logos are like electric blue. Everything's kind of quite dull and boring, and as I say, there was a kind of change in the direction of Klarna when just before I joined, I think. So just over 2 years ago, when they released all of the new branding, they changed everything and made it all pink and
Yeah, became fashionable, didn't it?
yes,
Really.
exactly that. So it enables us to align closer with brands that are cool as well. If we're cool, I don't call myself cool, but yeah, it allows us to align it, and brands are more likely to want to work with us if we do have that kind of consumer perception. So yeah, that's worked quite well for us.
I do think as well, there's other bits and bobs that are thrown in the mix. Like you do use influencer marketing as well, which again, you can't imagine like SagePaid doing something like that, can you? I don't know. It's just a very different space for a different product that's been, I feel, marketed really well. Hence the pink wall behind Rich. Rich, that we've stolen.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like maybe you could like edit some pink onto mine, because I think my marketing are probably going to be a bit annoyed that I'm just sat here behind a whiteboard.
You got the dog on there.
We're
Jobs
enjoying the
good.
background. Has that guy in the background had the dog's hair grafted onto his own head there? Talk about people looking like the dogs.
No, he's got like a baby, he's got a baby carrier, which I'm not sure about. There we go.
Nice.
In terms of the obstacles or the hurdles that you kind of facing now, there's obviously you're relying on platforms to kind of in terms of the delivery of your product, but obviously Shopify have kind of gone down the route of kind of, and it's not the first time they've done it. I don't think they've, in terms of like kind of locking yourselves out almost. I think they've done a similar thing with MailChimp, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I think in the past, I think they've done.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think they've tried to launch kind of product features before, and point one is that they tend to focus very much at the kind of lower end of the client base that they have when they launch these new features.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one piece, and another piece that's kind of worth noting is just going back again to the kind of consumer franchise piece. If you're a consumer and you've used Klarna before, or you're aware of Klarna, and you go onto a site, it's not a case of they're not going to have Klarna on there anymore. It will just be a case of they'll have two options. So it will be Klarna, and then it will be whatever they call it, Shopify payments. And the consumer they don't work in e-commerce, so they're not going to know what Shopify is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
which is one thing to kind of note. So they're obviously more likely to be hopefully going to be more likely to go for the Klarna option rather than the Shopify option. So that's one piece, and then the other piece is the whole consumer experience piece as well. So it's not just a case of having a payment option at checkout. You have to have everything else that comes around it. So I mentioned the app quite a lot, but being able to go onto the app, mark things as returned, pay for things sooner, delay a payment, those kind of things. So there's a whole other kind of piece behind it that I don't think Shopify have potentially thought about when they've decided to launch this. And I think the final piece is actually the consumer, the kind of customer support. Sorry. So Klarna is very different from a lot of companies in the sense that we are a B2B brand, but we're also predominantly a B2C brand. So we've got a whole 1,000-man support team that looks after consumer queries. I don't think
Shopify don't.
They have a support team, but obviously that support team's for B2B. So for questions or questions about their site, they're not going to be, my parcel hasn't turned up.
We've experienced it ourselves. So we've got a messenger that sits across people's sites. And then even some of the overlays, some of the inquiry forms, the overlays that we do, we've got people saying, well, I ordered this 3 days ago. So when's this like actually contacting us and asking us directly like when things are going to arrive and things like that. So yeah, they've probably opened up a whole world of pain, those guys, for themselves. Yeah. Well, they've always kind of pushed it was always Stripe traditionally, wasn't it? And it was expensive when you looked at it. It was kind of a couple of % at least that they were charging. And then if you wanted to work with a third-party payment gateway, there was kind of a there was a markup. There was an underlying, I can't remember what it was. It might be like 1.5%, and then plus whatever you're paying through Klarna, through SagePay, through whatever your third party was that you chose to use. And online, in terms of online retail, I think everyone makes this assumption. I'm always cynical about this. So everyone makes this assumption that you're turning over £10 million online. You've got £10 million in your pocket to spend on yachts. Like, it doesn't work like that. Your margin is like that 2% can make a heck of a difference. And I think they're even talking actually. Just I think they're talking about the UK government making putting in place an online sales tax of another 2%. So these things kind of add up really. And that looks like, from the outside looking in, they've looked like, right, online's performed really well. So how do we get some of this furlough money back and these bounce back scheme revenues back? We'll penalise that, when really the margin online is it's certainly something you've got to be acutely aware of when you're trading online anyway.
I think it's a valid point where, like, you speak to people in fashion, for example, and they might have higher margins or naturally. Speak to someone in white goods, and that margin may be like 3% as is.
Oh,
for, like, a fridge
the likes
freezer.
of AO and people like that.
Yeah.
Just there's well, you see it now, and Dan might have different experiences of it. But years ago, so when I started in e-commerce 15 years ago or something,
The Industrial Revolution.
thanks, Tim. It was a case of you had video games retailers, you had people selling white goods and things, electronics, and they gradually phased out. The margin just wasn't there. So what you found was that the big guns that can more or less run pay-per-click adverts and paid campaigns and take a loss on those campaigns, they were the ones that were winning out because they had the stores back in PC World, that type of thing. Yeah. They had the stores backing them up as well, and these little independents kind of faded out. I think we've got the likes of Phase One, where you've got very specialist, DJ equipment and things. Your real specialist continues to survive, but certainly you don't have an abundance of. I mean, AO's done well to get to where they have, but it tends to be, like you say, a fashion retailers and things where you've naturally got a bit more margin in it, where the smaller independents got more chance to survive, I guess.
I agreed. Right then, I was going to say ladies and gents, there's no ladies here. Just absolutely blown my head. I think we're coming towards the end of this, so we'll go to like one last point, a bit of a wrap up, and then we'll take it from there. Done. So there's been a number of points discussed, haven't there, between us all today? Why am I sound? It's like a church sermon, this now.
You're actually saying it like you're going to accuse me of something.
Yeah, do you know what it is? I've been gearing up on my lawyer speak all week, and now I'm ready. I've watched Suits, and I'm good to go.
I watched a Joe Rogan, and
yeah, this is it now. I've got my sentence and everything, English language. Hey. But yeah, I think there's been a number of key points discussed in this, and obviously I think the key one to get across, especially from Dan's point of view, was about obviously the Klarna sense element as well, where it's not just about that mass market share that they have and the way that they dominate in the world. It's also about informing people of how to use it correctly.
Is this Jerry Springer's final thought?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is this what you're doing?
This is where the couple get back together at the end.
This is we all hug it out.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I've taken away from this, that it's not just about a company who sit in payments and, as I said before, quite boring, quite bland. It's a different stance and a different way of looking at things and a different way of amassing that market share. Sorted. Perfect sum up. What else do you want?
Thanks for that, Tim.
Yeah, no worries, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having you. You live here? What are you on about?
Practically do.
But yeah, thank you very much for coming along, Dan. It is massively appreciated.
Cheers. Good to have you.
Thanks very much for having me. And I was just thinking whether I'm going to go get on the tube or the bus home and how much body weight I'm going to lose on the way home.
Nice.
Don't go there. I think I've lost about 10 pounds in these lights.
Those tubes are going to be grim today, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are they? How busy are they?
I came into the office on Wednesday actually, and I had the whole tube to myself. So I think it's actually probably the safest place to be at the moment.
Nice.
I was thinking like on the tube today. The tube was empty, but I mean, we're in Oxford Street, and it's starting to show signs of life again. So I came up here a couple of times during, not just cycling around during lockdown, and it was literally like a complete ghost town, and it was quite scary actually. But now it's there's definitely signs of life again. All of the pubs and whatnot are open, which is good news.
Which is the key thing.
Yeah, exactly. Most importantly, that there's nobody in our office though. So I'm here on my own, and there's probably 20 other floors in this building, none of which seem to. Some of them, I think a few of them have got people in, but.
It's similar with us. We've within our building, but every member of staff is back with us. I think everyone had enough, or everyone was. I don't know. Like I think everyone's just keen to get back to the way things were. So I think we've got everyone's back. We got like kind of work from home thing going on a bit more than what we had previously. But it's nice to be back.
Yeah, and I think I must admit I do enjoy working from home, but I have to say I have enjoyed coming back in this week just for a couple of days, seeing everybody, just getting a change of scenery, to be honest, as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And being able to work at a proper desk rather than in my bedroom, which is quite nice as well. But yeah, I think moving forwards, we've quite an open work from home policy anyway. But I think I'll probably aim from a personal perspective to do like half and half. I think so, half at home and half in the office. I mean, my role in itself is quite in person, to be honest. So a lot of kind of face-to-face meetings and stuff. So I will have to be in town quite a bit. But yeah, it's nice to have that option as well, isn't it?
That's it.
100%.
Cool.
Cool.
Guys,
Yeah,
well, thanks again for having me, and have a lovely weekend.
will do.
See you soon.
Brilliant.
See you soon,
See you
Dan.
later.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.